Welcome to Psychic Bent. My name is Carrie.
And I'm Kim. We are two sisters wanting to help other psychics learn and grow in their abilities and to help educate about spirits, angels, and everything psychic.
Welcome back, listeners, to Psychic Bent. Thank you so much for listening to all of the episodes that we've put out so far. I want to say welcome to the latest subscribers and followers that have begun following us and enjoying the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to us and to subscribe. This week we have a guest on that we will be talking to that we've had on before, and that's going to be our sister Julie. Her Facebook page is JulzPsychicReads. Welcome to the show, Julie.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Now, what Julie does is she is a practicing psychic medium, and if you listen to the episode that we had with her before, she was, I believe you were ghost hunting at that time.
I was.
And hadn't retired from that yet, but we'll cover that in a bit. We wanted to have you on because we wanted to know how things were going for you in the psychic medium arena since you've started your Facebook, and if anything new's been going on or anything in that area for you.
Well, things are going a little slower since we started, because it's when you start a new Facebook page, things tend to go a little slower till you build things up. But I have had a few more readings and that sort of thing, a few new contacts. I'm enjoying doing more readings, getting to know more people, hoping to get to know more people coming up soon. It's interesting to read, always to get to read new people because of the interactions with their spirit people, their family members. It's always a crapshoot, so to speak, with what you're going to get. Some interesting living people and some interesting dead people, but I really enjoy what I do.
Well, good.
Julie, are there any other shows that you are doing other than the Haunted America Conference?
No, the Haunted America show is the only one that I'm currently doing.
What is the most challenging thing that might happen to you while you're doing a psychic reading?
One of the most challenging things that I do in a psychic reading is because I don't personally have a private space to do psychic readings. So I'm usually in a place where there's other people. Usually I'm doing it at a venue, or I'm currently doing it at a place where there's other people around. And when I open up to do a reading, it's like drawing moth to a flame. Other spirits are around, and they tend to want to step forward. So it's kind of getting those people to back off so I can hone in on the spirit I'm trying to reach, so I can read that person's family member. So weeding through the spirits that I don't need to read is a little challenging.
Does that get overwhelming?
It can be, depending on the size of the crowd that's around, because everybody has dead people with them. I know that's a little overwhelming for some people to hear. They're like, what? I've got a dead person with me? But people have their spirits with them, their family members with them all the time. Whether they want to communicate with them or not is another story. But they've got their loved ones around all the time. Intermittently interloping, that sort of thing. But they're, you may not have someone with you right now, but they come and go.
So, Julie, have you ever had to deal with non-believers that come to you for a reading?
I've had a lot of people get read that don't believe in what they're doing there. I don't know why they come, but they'll sit there and they've got their arms crossed and they've got a scowl on their face and they don't believe anything I'm telling them. And they're like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And I'm like, why are you here? Why are you paying me money if you don't believe anything I'm telling you, or you don't want to believe anything I'm telling you? And you see a flicker across their face, so you know that you've hit the mark when you're telling them something. Because one, you're telling them the truth, because Spirit's telling you're telling them the truth. And when you see that flicker across their face and then they say, I don't believe that, and you're like, yes, you do. I just told you something that hit a mark, and you're like, ruh-roh, She just told me something that she couldn't know, and now I'm telling her I don't believe that. It's interesting because you do get non-believers who come, and I don't know why they come. Yeah, it happens quite frequently. Yeah, let's throw money away.
That's the free will thing, though. You're either going to believe it or you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you do anything special to prepare for these readings whenever you're in a place where you're not just you and that individual?
Well, I don't do any more special for a reading when there's going to be a lot of people than I do when there's going to be a few people. It's all the same when I get ready for a reading. It's communicating with my spirit team, doing some form of meditation, whatever that may be for me. It's different for me than it is for other people. Everybody's got their own form of meditation. And then just getting in a quiet place and trying to calm down, because I tend to get a little excited before I do readings, because there's, no matter how accurate I might be, I still have that area of doubt where am I gonna
Ego pops in.
Yeah, ego. That's exactly right. Ego pops in. Am I going to hear crickets? And then what am I going to do? Because I've had people where I've tried to read them and I get nothing, and I give them their money back, because it's not fair to take their money and not communicate with anybody. So I have had times where I've said, I'm not getting anything, here's your money back, because I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it to help people and to communicate and to assist people in their lives. So I have had the occasion where I've given them their money back. They haven't asked for it. I've just said, I can't. For some reason, I can't read you. Here's your money back. I don't feel like I can honestly take your money.
Yeah.
So, like, we can't read each other.
Well, we know each other too well.
If you do have blocks, is it because they don't want to hear what you have to say, or they don't believe in what you do?
I think it can be a combination of their block. It can be a combination of the block of the person, of the spirit person. Sometimes you get a spirit person who really doesn't believe in mediumship, because of their religious belief as a dead person. What they grew up with and believing what mediums were spiritually and religiously. And they don't want anything to do with it, because they still think it's, even though the knowledge they have on the other side, they still think it's quote unquote demonic, and they want nothing to do with you, so they will not communicate with you at all. So you get those things, and you just can't get form a bond with the spirit on the other side. You get nothing.
I had a situation where I was visiting a friend's house that is Native American, and the house has ancestors in it, their ancestors, and there was an older woman in the house, and I was trying to communicate with her. But, sometimes you run into entities that don't want to talk to you for various reasons of what was going on with their culture at that time that they lived or were among the living. And she did not really want to talk to me because I was not Native American. So instead of totally ignoring me, she didn't talk to me, but she showed me pictures. I would see things in my mind that she was showing me, like a baseball bat. Like, why is this a baseball bat? But okay. And then I relayed the baseball bat, and it meant something to the person, but she still would not, she still doesn't talk to me. And she just let me see her that time, but she just refused to speak to me. Has that happened to you?
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about. The spirit won't make a bond with me because of their personal beliefs.
Have they ever shared it with you clairvoyantly?
No, I've not run into that. I had a case not too long ago where a gentleman invited me to his home because he was having what he thought was a Native American person visit his home, and was kind of wanting to know what their interest was. Not that he wanted them to leave or anything. He just was curious what their interest was in the home. So I went, and there were several things going on in the home, but one of them was a Native American woman. She was just interested in the home because it had been their Indian land beforehand, and there were just several things she had interest in the home, and it was just strictly interest. And she had no problem talking to me because I was white. There was no problem there. So it just depends on the spirit, I guess.
So do you think that they possibly carried their beliefs of the time that they lived and what they endured, life lessons and things with them when they transitioned, and still kind of have that process with them today, that thought process? And that was why maybe she did not want to communicate with me?
Yes.
Or maybe that's still part of their spirit path.
Spiritual journey.
Yeah.
Or whatever plane they're on.
Julie, why don't you tell us about how you don't like to let a psychic know that you are psychic when you go to get a reading?
I like to get readings on occasion too, but I don't tell the psychic that I'm psychic, because I want to see how accurate they are. And Two, they tend to read me differently if they know I'm a psychic. Then they're on edge, and then they're like, "Am I right?" They'll say something. "Am I right?" They're constantly checking themselves. But I was in Tucson, and I was getting a psychic reading, and the woman was halfway through, and she stops and she said, "Aha! You didn't tell me you were psychic." And then it was interesting how she came across that. So that was very interesting. And then at the end, I ended up reading her because her son, who had passed, was communicating with me. But I waited to the end to read her. And she was very impressed. In fact, she wanted me to come work for her. But I was like, no, I live in St. Louis area. And it was interesting because the exorbitant amount of money that they charged, she asked me how much I charged, and she said, "Never mind."
Yeah, Tucson's a very spiritual place.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Well, so I had gone to a Maker's Mart show. It was just a local gathering, and I had never seen it on Facebook before, and I thought, oh, I'm into crafts. I like crafts. And then I saw it said Oracle card reading, and I'm like, oh, I'm down, because it's nice to have someone else do your reading and not do your own card reading, Okay, so I'm going to sit down to get this reading. And she's like, you could take notes, you could record this, whatever you want to do. However you best you're gonna, get the most out of the reading. And I'm like, oh, I got a sleep apnea app I use for when I'm communicating with spirits, ghosts and such. So I thought I'll just on my phone. And the sleep apnea app is for people with sleep apnea. The app will kick on whenever it hears a noise. So if you're coughing in your sleep, it kicks on. If you're gasping for breath, it kicks on, but it also picks up. It's very sensitive, and it picks up entities when they're trying to communicate with you. And I've had great success with this particular app. I have it on my iPad and my iPhone. So I'm like, I'll just record that on my app. So I press play, and she starts to give the reading, and I look down, and it's no longer playing. It stopped. I'm like, that's weird. So I play again. I record, not play. I hit record. And I look down, and it had stopped. And then I hit record again. Now it's going, and we're doing the reading and everything. And I like to wait a day or two after I have a reading to go back and listen to the recording, because the way my mind is, I've tried to work it through my head, and then I have to go back and listen to it to see if I actually remembered it correctly after I worked it through my head. And so when I played it back, it was just garbled. You could hear her talking. You could understand a darn thing. So I just thought that was strange. So why do you think that happened? Probably the same reason that it didn't help recording at the beginning of the podcast.
Well, I'm personally not surprised about that because out of the different recordings that we have done, we've had things prevent things from recording. So, but I wonder why that particular situation was being blocked.
My guess was that there was so much energy in the room, it just affected the electronic equipment.
Okay, so I've obviously come to this particular market for the sole purpose of oracle reading. I walk in, she's doing a reading, and she has some jewelry, and of course, as an artist, I appreciate other people's work. So I was checking things out and trying to get an idea on how far they were into the reading. Like, how much time am I going to? And I had a t-shirt on. The sleeves came a little bit down my arm, and I have on my right arm a phoenix rising with a lotus bloom on the bottom. And it takes up a good portion of my forearm. The top of the phoenix was covered by the sleeve of the t-shirt. And so I'm not paying any attention. People normally don't comment on the tattoo. I hear, I love your phoenix. And so she's looking at me, and I thanked her, and then she went back to do her reading, but she kept looking at me. And I'm like, oh, she's trying to tune in. She's trying to figure out, what is it about her? And then I looked at the other tables. I know how it is when you go to a show, you want, people don't stop at your table. You feel a little, well, okay. So I want to make sure I stopped at everybody's table, whether it was something I resonated with or not. I did stop and at least had a conversation. And I come back, and she's like, I like your necklace. I'm like, thank you. And I have a necklace that I wear, I would say 99% of the time, because it's my psychic protection necklace. She was going on and on about it, and she goes that it has a labradorite, it has a blue kyanite, and behind those stones is a black shungite. And those are all my protective psychic stones that I wear in copper, which amplifies the effect. Well, she saw the flash of the labradorite, and she was getting all excited about that. And then when it was time to do my reading, she wanted to talk about the necklace. And I showed her the shungite behind and all that. And she would throw out different terms to see if I was familiar with them. So she was trying to figure out what I was. A lot of people that do oracle cards or use other means for divining and not using their psychic abilities have sometimes trouble with how do you do it as a psychic. I think she was trying to put her finger on what was I. Was I Druid? Was I Wicca? What was I? She knew I was something. Nothing was screaming, this is what I am. Because I find that I perceive myself as a psychic. I'd like to use my divining tools, but I rely mainly on myself and spirit. But it was kind of funny. She was trying to figure it out. And she wouldn't come out and ask, but she was trying to figure it out. So basically, Julie, do you have that happen to you where they're trying to figure out what are you? Like they can't quite figure it out. They know there's something, but they don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good at blanketing my abilities when I need to. So it's usually a pretty good psychic that can pick up on if I'm psychic or not during a reading, because I try to close down pretty good because I don't want spirits just wandering in. But I think her son was able to wander in because she and I were in the same space together, and that was a lot of energy in one space. But a lot of her energy and my energy in a very spiritual location. So I don't usually get people fishing very much. If they're fishing, it makes me wonder. Usually if they're very good at what they do, they can tell.
Well, I was going to say, in all fairness for her, she was actually doing a reading for somebody else, plus mining her booth, and then asking Carrie questions. So she had a lot.
Yeah, she was kind of divided.
Yeah.
So she may have been very good, but very split in what she was doing. So it's not fair to say that she was just fishing, not very good at what she was doing, because she was very distracted probably.
Now, I mentioned earlier on the introduction that you were ghost hunting at the point in time when we did the last episode with you.
Yes.
And now that you've retired from that.
Yes.
Have you found that since you've stopped doing the ghost hunting that entities are drawn to you more or anything like that happening?
I've really not found any difference in that area. I had to retire because of medical issues, but I still have a really strong interest in it. So nothing really has changed in that instance other than I'm not out doing people's homes. I still get called to people's homes to come and intervene. So that hasn't changed. Okay. I'll get emails from people saying, there's something going on at my house. Can you come to my house and check things out? And I will go and do that.
But you're not doing the actual ghost hunting
Not
anymore,
doing the actual ghost hunting, no.
Did you have to do anything different in your preparations for those than what you did for psychic medium reading?
Same thing.
Same thing?
Protecting myself is protecting myself. I put myself in a protective shell because I need to protect my spirit first and protect myself first. And then I do that with my spirit team and a little ritual that I do. Then I go out and see what I can do for the families and that sort of thing.
Have you ever had anything very unusual or disturbing happen to you while you were doing ghost hunting or the ghost tours?
I've seen some disturbing things, and I've found some disturbing things at people's homes.
Oh.
But I've never brought anything home with me because I make sure that doesn't happen.
Well, I didn't think you'd do that. I just meant on the actual...
Yeah, I've had some homes where I've told them they need to have a cleansing greater than what I could do, like maybe a priest come into their home, something more advanced than what I could do.
I know Carrie's done that too, where she's had some different kind of entities she's had to deal with as well, haven't you?
Yes. I think the biggest, and I don't know if you've run into this, Julie, but I think the biggest problem that I run into is when someone gets confirmation that they have a ghost in their house, they start to think of it as a pet.
Yes. They don't want it to go.
And that's so wrong on many levels.
Well, you find some ghosts that are really kind of benign, and that's okay if they want them to stay. But there are some that are poltergeists and some that are not very friendly and some that really don't need to be there, and they need to go. But there are some that are family member spirits that are there, and they're not harmful. They just come in and come out. There are some that are children that are there, that are maybe their children that are in and out, that are benign and harmless. But you also get some tricksters that will tell you that they are certain things when they're not. So you really need somebody that is a professional to come in and tell you what's going on, not just assume that you know what's going on when you don't. But yeah, you can't own a ghost. You need to know what's going on. Now, you may have a different philosophy on that and think all ghosts need to go. But I've come across ghosts that were very harmless and had specific reasons for being there and weren't harmful in being there.
Well, I think, and especially in this one situation, they did not transition. They were afraid to cross over. And the longer they interacted with the owner of the house, the more, it seemed like the more confused they got on things. And so in this instance, it's a ghost that they're thinking it's a pet, and this is someone who has not transitioned. And yes, the more interaction they do, I think is a little more harmful for said ghost. It's one thing when a loved one transitions and comes back and visits.
That's correct.
So I think in these situations where you have a ghost, I think they look at Hollywood and it's either scares them or they think it's Casper.
That's correct.
If this is someone who hasn't crossed over and you're wanting to keep them there, you're actually keeping them from going to the next level.
Correct. You're doing more harm than good.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize what that really is, even though you try to tell them.
That's correct.
On one particular house, they had something in the lower level that needed to go, that was not good.
Yes.
But they wanted to cherry pick which ones you sent away and which ones you kept. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. It's all or nothing, because they all need to go. So, I mean, that's kind of what I have run into is if, they want to keep one and send the other one away. And it's like, no, they all need to go, because if they're a ghost, they need to cross over. They need to do what's next in their journey.
I know that I believe in elementals and things like that, because we all know that there's ghost spirits and there's other things out there, some unexplained, and some of those are elementals. And I know that Carrie's had an experience with one. I've had an experience with one. How about you? What are your thoughts and impressions or whatever of elementals? And do you believe in them, like fairies and stuff like that?
I believe elementals exist. I have had an experience with fairies when I was in Ireland. We were going on a horse-drawn carriage tour, and the carriage driver said something about we were going by a fairy hill and made a comment, and I kind of chuckled a little bit, and he goes, don't make fun of the fairies. And I really wasn't making fun of the fairies. I just kind of chuckled about what he said. He said something, and I kind of thought it was amusing. And he said, oh, don't make fun of the fairies, though you'll make them angry. And my glasses disappeared. And we were on a bus tour, and I thought I lost my glasses at the bus. And I'd asked everybody on the bus, have you seen my glasses? Have you seen my glasses? Even though I knew they disappeared while we were on the carriage ride. But we checked the carriage, we checked all over, and I thought they were gone forever. And he said something about, before we got off the carriage, he said, you need to apologize to the fairies for laughing. And so I apologized to the fairies. I said, I'm very sorry I laughed. I meant no harm. Even though I felt ridiculous, I said I apologized and tried to sound sincere. And the last person who got on the bus said, these glasses were just outside the bus. Do they belong to anybody? And everybody who'd got on the bus had not seen the glasses, because I'd asked everybody that got on the bus, I said, did you guys happen to see a pair of glasses? I lost my glasses. And they said, no. And the last person who got on the bus said, these pair of glasses happen to be sitting outside the bus. Did anybody lose them? And they were my glasses.
Oh, wow.
So the fairies returned my glasses.
So don't laugh at the fairies.
Do not laugh at the fairies, or even remotely make them think you're laughing at them.
Mm. You used to have a little fairy garden.
I had a little fairy garden in my house, which probably should have been outside the house, but it was a little terrarium, a bowl, like a fish bowl, that was set up that had little moss and different things. I bought it. It had little plant life in there and had a little fairy house and different fairy things set up in there to look like a little fairy garden. And I had it for a really long time until eventually all the plants died.
So when you were going through the place in Ireland, was energy different there? Did it feel different when you went in that area?
The whole thing of Ireland feels different. It feels mystic in Ireland, or I personally felt that it did, that the whole energy of Ireland was different. But Ireland, when they talk about the wee folks, they talk about the wee folks all the time. And when they talk about the wee folks, they're talking about the fairies and the gnomes. And probably elementals in the sense, but they're not referring to them as elementals. They're talking about the fairy folk, and they kind of lump a bunch of things into the fairy folk. But they talk about them all the time. I mean, something goes wrong, you've upset the fairy folk. You know, something goes right, you've been blessed by the fairy folk. Everything has to do with the fairy folk. And they are very strong believers in, even to this day, everything has to do with the fairy folk. But there's a strong element of magic when you get there. You can feel it in your spirit.
I know sometimes whenever I go outside to different places, you can just feel different types of energy around you. You know, you walk several yards away and it's just totally different. You don't feel that. Do you think that's part of an encounter with elementals and such? Because I know they like to not interact. They don't have to.
I think that has something to do with that. I also think it has to do with dimensions. And I think sometimes we come a little closer to dimensions than we suspect. But I think like with gnomes and stuff, they like to live way out in the woods. So I don't know if we're coming in contact with gnomes, but we may be coming in contact more with elementals than we are with. And I think there's fairies that live in the United States. I don't think they just live in Ireland and that sort of thing. I think they're here as well. I think we just don't pay attention to them. So I think we come in contact with magical beings all the time, or mystical beings, maybe I should say, instead of magical beings, mystical beings all the time. We just don't pay attention. We're just not raised to pay attention.
I remember growing up, remember when something would disappear when we were little, Mom would say the little people took it?
Yes. Yeah.
And I really didn't think about that. When Julie was talking about their hair, I'm like, I remember, that popped in my head. Like, I remember Mom saying the little people took it. Something was missing, they took it. That's funny. I hadn't thought about that in years.
You're smiling, Julie. What are you thinking?
I'm just remembering that memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how you don't put any connection to that other than there's just little people?
Yeah, the fairy folk. Now, one thing that we can maybe associate with some of that energy that you're talking about were vortexes that we had mentioned one time before. Were vortexes. Maybe there's big vortexes out west, but maybe there's smaller vortexes too that we maybe come in contact with, small little whirls of energy that we come in contact with too, that are not big enough to be considered the huge vortexes out in Arizona and those places, but maybe little vortexes that we run across in our out and about too.
Talk a little bit about those vortexes, because I think you've experienced those out in Arizona.
We were out in Arizona and when places where they had the vortexes, and you could really definitely feel the energy there, and people would line up to experience the vortexes. And even my husband, who's not really into all the foo-foo woo-woo stuff, said he felt energy differences. And he's probably the least likely person to feel a woo-woo thing. And he said he could feel the energy. He felt a little dizzy, felt a little off-kilter when we were in the vortexes.
Now, did you go to more than one? Because
well, I can only, because I'm disabled, I can only climb to one. Mm-hmm. But we went to a couple others, and he climbed through them. I can only climb to one.
Apparently, the different vortexes there do different things.
Yeah, I don't remember what all they do. The different vortexes did different things.
Some are the masculine energy, others is female energy.
Yeah. Then
it's the male-female and balance energies and such.
Yeah.
That may be something we want to do an episode on, Carrie.
Absolutely. A lot of people do pilgrimages to that area. Mm-hmm. Just to experience the vortex or just the spiritual nature of that climate.
Yeah. So do you think, both of you, this is to both of you, do you think that portals are different than the vortexes? Like, even, I know in homes sometimes there's portals, but do you think they're to different dimensions? Do you think they're related?
I think of personally, and I don't have anything to back this up other than just my personal belief, I think a portal and a vortex are different things. I think vortexes are energy, and I think portals go to different dimensions or are doorways.
I agree with Julie on that, especially because, like, how many times is a mirror used as a portal where things can enter through and leave through, whereas the vortex has has the actual energy feel. You feel things there. It feels different. I think a portal is you got things entering and leaving.
Yeah, but I think you also feel different things at a portal, too. I mean, you have to be able to feel that energy as well, I would think, because that is an energy.
But I think it's a different type of energy.
Different type of energy.
Yeah. I mean, I've only been to, they called it the Center of the Universe in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is more of a vortex, and that had different energy. But when you've experienced a portal, I think it's more of a low level. What I've experienced is more of a low level energy. Have you experienced a portal, Julie?
I have experienced a portal once, and the vortex was more like a vibration, where the portal I would describe more as a, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say it was windy, but it was more of a, like the hair standing up on my arm, where the portal was a vibration. It was a different vibrational level for me.
What about you, Kim?
I can honestly say I don't know if I've actually experienced a portal as far as being close to one. I know I haven't done the vortex. Pretty sure I haven't been in a vortex. But, of course, who knows what the energy is that I feel whenever I'm out somewhere. That's why I was wondering what that was all about, if that was a vortex or not. Because I think vortexes are everywhere. I mean, at different places. I don't mean just in Arizona.
Correct.
They're scattered. But I know that there's definitely times when I'm out at different places outside that I do feel different energies. That's all I got on those. Okay. I would like to do some research though on those because it really sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Julie, you said you do other things and that you are going to be doing a conference coming up. That's the same one we're going to. Why don't you tell our listeners about the conference that you're going to be at?
Yes, it's the Haunted America Conference. I think it's the weekend of the 26th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, of June. And it's Troy Taylor's conference, and I think it's the 26th one or the 27th one. I mean, he's done it every year for several years. It's a paid conference, but you don't have to pay to come into the area where the vendors are. And that's where I'm going to be, and Carrie's going to be, and Kim's going to be. And I'm going to be doing readings. I do charge a fee for the readings. It's $20 for 15 minutes. I take first come, first serve. They sign up for an appointment. I have an appointment book out there, but once I fill up, I'm sold out. I will be there on Friday and Saturday.
What goes on at that conference? If they do pay to go into the actual conference itself, what do they get?
They get different lectures all day long on both days. There are other things that happen. They could go to the website. It's hauntedamerica.com, and they can see what the price is for the conference. They can see what all it includes and what the actual times are.
And so a lot of fun things, because Julie used to do the ghost tours during the conference.
They've got ghost tours. They've got after-hour events. A lot of them may be sold out by now. So you'd have to get on there and see and book fast if you want some things. I used to do the bus tours. I've retired since I've had medical issues, but they've got lots of fun things. But the conference itself has a lot of interesting topics that they talk about.
What's usually in the vendor fair part of it?
Oh, there's all kinds of things. They've got people selling Ouija boards. They've got different people doing different kinds of readings. They're selling all different kinds of things. There's just all kinds of stuff going on in there.
And what's really interesting is it's a haunted venue, which when you get all that energy at a haunted venue, you can really feel it.
Well, it's at the college.
Carrie's had some experiences there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a full-blown apparition there.
Yeah, so it's at the community college, so there's lots of room, lots of parking. So it's a great venue to have the conference at. That's Lewis and Clark Community College.
Right, where I got married.
Yes, you got married at a haunted venue.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Back onto your psychic medium things. Is there one type of reading that you do a lot of? What is your main skill whenever you're doing your mediumship? You've talked before about how whenever you're doing your readings, you like to touch the person.
The way that I structure my readings, I do a few different things. I'm a nurse by trade, so I do a physical reading, which looks at them medically. So I do a brief little medical scan, and that's why I touch the person. If they're not interested in that, we don't have to do that. That's just something that I just work into my reading. It also helps me make a connection, but I can do the reading definitely without having to do that. Then we talk to spirit and see what Spirit has to say. And then we'll talk about what people like to talk about usually when they think about going to a medium, a psychic, is, if they want to talk about their job, or if they want to talk about their children, or whatever they want to talk about. We kind of do that at the last part and answer their questions as best as I can. I don't tell the future. I can tell them what Spirit wants them to know, is basically what it is. I can't tell you winning lottery numbers. Another thing that I cannot do is I cannot tell you names. Spirit just doesn't give me that. I can't tell you I'm talking to your Uncle John, because I don't get John's name. Very seldom do I get names. And that's very, very seldom do I get names. But I can usually describe the person, and I can tell you what they're telling me.
Would you say the majority of your readings are grief readings?
I do get a lot of people who are grieving who come to me, and I'm able to help them that way. So I would say I do a lot of grief work, but that's because I get a lot of people who are grieving that come to me.
Do you feel extra drained on those types of readings than just I'm here to see you tell me about how my job's going to be or whatever? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I tend to get drained doing a reading anyway because it tends to be taxing. Now, I'll be more drained when I'm doing the conference readings because I'm doing reading after reading after reading after reading. That tends to be more draining. But I will get a little more drained with a grief reading because the person who is wanting the reading tends to be in an emotional state as well, because they're in a state of grieving. They tend to be firing off a lot of emotions as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would make sense. Are there different degrees of draining of energy for you? Have you ever had that where it's more draining for one on the other side to communicate with you than another?
It can be if they're newly crossed over because they don't always understand my symbols, how I communicate, and they tend to be a little all over the place as well. And it might take a little more on my part to understand what they're trying to tell me because they're not necessarily communicating by my symbols. So then I have to work harder to understand what they're saying. So they can be a little more challenging.
That makes sense. Because they're still probably trying to figure out what's going on.
Well, yeah, but they're a little more, I don't want to say hyper, but hyper, I guess is a better word for it, even though they're not like hyper in the sense that we think of hyper. They're just really, they talk a little faster. I can't always understand what they're saying.
Do you think it's because they found someone they could talk to and they get excited?
Sometimes. Yeah, I think that's a good part of it.
So when you have encountered something that may not have been human before,
yes.
How do you feel during that? What do you experience?
I get sick to my stomach, extremely sick to my stomach, and I don't feel well. Headache. It's definitely a different feeling.
Do you think it's the lower vibration of it, or do you think it's just it's got to be the energy it's putting off, right?
It's the different vibration of it. It's the energy it's putting off. A lot of times there's a lot of rage and anger with it. So you feel that as well. You're bombarded by its nastiness.
So I want to ask you what you think, looking back now, what was in the basement of the old house when we were growing up. It would make me flee.
Yeah, it would make me flee too. It was something not nice. I don't know that it was a demon. I don't get that it was that. But it was definitely something that didn't belong there.
Well, it didn't want people there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was something associated with the land.
Yeah. It was very effective on getting you out of there. Tell you how many times I fell running up the stairs from the basement.
Yeah, I think it was something associated with the land that had been there a lot longer than the house, I want to say. But I don't know. I'd have to feel it again. But that's what hindsight, looking back, that's what I feel.
It's kind of hard because especially, looking back at that age you didn't know you were psychic or there was no name for it. You know what I'm saying? You knew you were seeing things, but you didn't have a name for what was going on and you hadn't experienced enough to have have that feel for it yet.
Well, our energies were bouncing all over the place too because one, we were teenagers and we didn't know how to hone in that energy and focus it. So we were still bouncing things around.
Sometimes literally.
Exactly.
It's definitely an interesting place to grow up.
Yeah, it was.
It was funny down the road because, we talked about this before, that the people that purchased the house wanted it to be haunted.
Yeah, well, and on a side note, thinking back, we could have created a poltergeist
We could have.
in that house with the amount of psychic teenagers and the energy that we were projecting as unfocused psychics and the fear that we had in that house. I mean, there could have been something there, but we could have also projected a poltergeist.
Yes. And we could have amped up whatever was in there too because of the abilities.
Exactly.
Being so ungrounded.
Exactly.
The people that bought the house after us, someone sent me a link to one of their Facebook pages. It was a link where they were discussing the haunted house. And people were making comments that they'd only been there once and never swore they'd never go back and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, were you in the basement? And I wanted to ask that. Did this take place in the basement where you didn't want to go back? I just thought it was interesting because they did want it to be haunted.
And that's funny because I met people who lived in that house and they said they never had a haunted thing happen.
Yeah, so isn't that funny?
Yeah, very interesting.
But I think people that are closed off probably left brain it so much that whatever is happening in the house, they've already have an explanation for it and will never believe that it's actually an entity.
Yeah, that's possible.
But do you think that if it was there for so many years or whatever, that someone that doesn't believe that it would just stop? Or just
If it was a
laying in
poltergeists tend to dissipate after the energies leave.
Right, but I mean, any other entity that was there, I mean, would they just...
Oh, I think they would feel uneasy.
Do you think the non-believers would feel uneasy, but yet the entity would just be fine in its own little corner?
I think it would still be there. I think it would still make them feel uncomfortable. I just think that they would attribute it to an old house, feeling of an old house.
Yeah, the man and woman in the house were fine. I mean, any interaction I had with those two, it was not bad. It was just the basement thing.
Yeah, the basement was something different.
Yeah, basement and up the stairs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the back stairs were creepy.
Yes, they were. So have you, Julie, had any kind of unusual experience that, whether it was through a psychic reading or at a place you were at, that was so memorable that you keep seeing it over and over again in your head or anything like that, or you relive it? Or is that just me that keeps reliving things that happened to them?
No, I've not had anything like that. Nothing that I can think of. I've not been anything so scary that I've had to I've relived it and relived it. I've had some pretty scary things, but not anything that I've relived and relived and relived.
Well, I'm not talking about just scary even. Something that was just so remarkable, or that you, wow, I can't believe that happened, or I experienced that.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
How about you, Carrie?
I think when something unusual happens that's new, I'll have that, and then want to talk about it, because it was something different and something new.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing.
I know that some of the encounters that I've had on different things, some of them just replay every once in a while in my head, like, I still can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I'm amazed when I'm done with the reading and people say, boy, you got this, and this right. And I'm always like, dang, Spirit is really amazing, because there's just no way I personally could have got it right. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, dang, that's crazy. I mean, I want to say to them, man, that's just crazy. But then they're going to look at me like, well, you're just plain nuts, because I'm just like, wow, But inside I'm like, wow, that's just really something. Spirit is just really amazing. But I'm always amazed at something like that.
Yeah.
I like it when you get one word and the word doesn't make sense, but you give that word to the person, and then you could see it all clicks. That's kind of fun, because you, like, I don't know why this word's coming to my head, but here you go. And then they're like, oh, this is what this means, and blah, blah, blah. Or you get a picture and you share that picture. I think that's kind of fun. It does make sense. And you're like going, okay, I'm glad that made sense, because it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I had one where I kept saying, I don't know why this word is coming to my mind, but I've just got to say it, because it just kept coming and coming and coming. And I just had kept putting it off in my mind because I thought that's not going to make any sense. And Spirit kept saying, no, you need to say it. And I'm like, but that's not going to make any sense. And it's like, it's not you it needs to make sense to. You need to say the word. And I said, for some reason, the word stained glass keeps coming to my mind. And they're like, they got a really surprised look on their face, and then they didn't say anything. At the end, they said stained glass made sense because their mother made stained glass, and they had recently taken up stained glass because they're making stained glass pictures because their mother had always made stained glass. And it was one of those things where, that was a lesson to me. It's like, it doesn't need to make sense to you. You need to say it because it's going to make sense to them, no matter how weird it sounds when it's coming across. Because I was just talking away, and stained glass. I'm like, I'm not going to say stained glass. Do you know how weird that sounds? And they're like, it doesn't need to make sense to you. It's to make sense to them. So I finally said, okay, stained glass. And they're like, boink. Stained glass.
Gave them validation, too.
Yeah.
Julie, have you ever just gone somewhere and you're minding your own business and you have someone who is insistent on talking?
All the time.
And do you have anybody that just won't give up? How do you handle that?
I have spirit that won't give up, and I have living people that won't give up. It happens all the time. And I have to tell spirit I'm off the clock, and I have to endure the living people that won't shut up.
We've all had that. It's like, okay. But they just sense that you can help them.
Yes.
Or they know you're psychic. And I don't think not everybody understands that each psychic has a different ability. It's not cookie cutter.
That's correct. I love it when you get well, if you're a psychic, why didn't you win the lottery? Well, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
We don't get the numbers. It doesn't work to benefit ourselves.
That's what manifesting's for.
That's right.
We have a weekly newsletter at work, and they had a whole section on mindfulness. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like, wow, that surprised me.
Well, I'm surprised it's not focused on that more often.
Yeah, well, mindfulness is not a term used normally in the workplace.
I think it's getting there more and more.
It's a bigger trend than you think.
Yeah, now it is.
It needs to be a big trend.
Definitely.
In the world we're in today.
Yep. This goes to both of you. Is there anything that you can think of that you would like to experience or encounter that you have not encountered before? Is there something out there that you just think, oh, wow, I wish that would happen to me, or I could experience that in the spiritual psychic world? Julie, why don't you go first? Or would you rather Carrie go first?
I was sure hoping Carrie'd go first.
Carrie, why don't you go first?
Well, personally, I think spirit has a really good sense of humor, and I don't want to say something that's going to have you hitting me in the next few days. You know what I'm saying? Because that, once you start, in my mind, once I start verbalizing something out loud, then that's when things start to momentum and move along. So I'm not sure I want to answer that question because it might happen. It might happen very soon.
Okay, fair enough.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm sure there are a lot of things I would love to experience, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
What about you, Kim?
Well, I actually have thought that I would love to have someone famous come to me and give me a little chat. You know what I mean?
Oh, you mean in your
Someone
dreams?
that's passed, yeah.
Well, before you go to bed, write it on a sheet of paper. Who'd you like to show up?
Have a chat with? Yeah.
Yeah. Let us know how that goes.
I've always thought about Marilyn Monroe. I'd always like to have a little chat with her.
Well, good luck.
I know.
I read an article about Marilyn Monroe where it was talking about the Marilyn Monroe, I forgot what they called it, but she had the ability to turn on and off her Marilyn Monroe.
Yes, she did.
So she could go down a New York street, very busy street, and no one would recognize her because she'd have her Marilyn Monroe shut off.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that very interesting. In this particular interview, a man's like, well, how come nobody's noticing it? I think he wanted the people to notice he was with Marilyn Monroe, and she had it shut off. And she's like, well, okay. And so she said, I'll turn it on. And she turned it on, and people all of a sudden knew she was there. And I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
That she could do that.
That was her Norma Jean. She was just Norma Jean. Yeah. And then she would turn on that other persona.
So when you talk to her, ask her how she did it. I found that interesting.
Okay. I think a lot of that has to do with whenever I'm not seen. So
Yeah, yes.
I can
That
relate to
invisible
that.
mode.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever done that, Julie, gone to invisible mode?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah. Kim has taken it to the next level, I think.
It feels like it sometimes.
She can't even get her order placed at a restaurant.
Right.
That's funny to observe. Not for you, but it's funny when you're observing it. Like, oh, yeah, they did it to her again.
I've come to the point where I just laugh about it whenever it happens. It's like, oh gosh, all right, let me flip the switch.
Well, if people are interested in getting a reading from me, I'm working on doing them by phone, but they should go to my Facebook page and instant message me. Use Messenger to contact me.
And they can also reach you at your email, which is Julz, Julz, PsychicReads, READS, that's all one word, at yahoo.com.
Yes.
But if you want a real quick response, just go to her Facebook page.
Julz Psychic Reads, JULZ Psychic Reads.
Do you have an Instagram as well, or just on Facebook?
No, just Facebook right now.
Just Facebook? Okay.
Well, does anybody have anything else that you'd like to bring up today?
If anybody needs kittens, I can hook you up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you've become a new mommy there, huh? Or grandma?
Yeah. Grandma. That's what Dad said. Are you a grandma yet?
A grand meow.
A grand meow.
All right. I think, Carrie, that's probably a wrap for the episode. What do you think?
I think so, unless Julie's got something else she wants to add.
Nope.
Well, I think that's what we have for this episode. Hope everyone checks out the Haunted America Conference website. There are some of the after hours still available. Some are sold out, so definitely get in there, check it out. And hopefully we can see you all in Haunted Godfrey, Illinois for the weekend of June 26th. Well, the vendor room's open the 27th and 28th. So it'd be the 27th and 28th for the vendor room. Right, Julie?
Yes.
And if you want to see all three of us, come on the 27th.
And if you don't come on the 27th.
That's right.
Yeah. But we're supposed to be together in the venue. So if you see one of us, the rest should be right there as well. Because we're supposed to be side by side, right, Julie?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, and Troy Taylor puts on the event, and he is a published author of many, many books and very knowledgeable of the paranormal. So he's very well known. So it's a nice, reputable venue. It's not a,
fly by night kind of thing.
Right. It's very established. I think it's the 28th conference.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody can come out and check us out. Please feel free to check out Julie's Facebook page and also Psychic Ben's Facebook page. I know Julie will respond, and we do respond to any comments or emails we get that are not spam, of course. So we do appreciate you listeners. Kim, do you have anything else you want to add?
Just wanted to again thank all of our subscribers and followers for listening to the podcast.
All right. Thank you, listeners. Julie, you want to say bye?
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. May your light shine bright.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, Psychic Bent. If you enjoyed Psychic Bent, please like, follow, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to Psychic Bent. We can be reached on Facebook at Psychic Bent Podcast. Our email address is psychicbent1@gmail.com. May your light shine bright.